Hey, this is Torin Talks, and today's video is going to be all about Stan Lee. As most of you may have heard or not, this week we truly lost an icon and a legend in the comic industry in Stan Lee. If you don't know who he was the editor, publisher, and chairman at Marvel Comics, and the co-creator of many of his characters, including Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Daredevil, the Fantastic Four, X-Men, Black Panther, Thor, one of my personal favorites, and Galactus, among others. I just kind of really want to talk about the impact that Stan Lee had on society in comic books, but kind of all over in general. But I will start within comic books. One of the main things that Stan Lee was known for was being a pioneer and an innovator and kind of challenging the status quo of comics at the time. If you don't know, the Comic Code Authority is kind of the regulating board of comics, and they kind of tell you what you can and cannot show in comics, as they are typically geared towards children or young adults. And this all came about in the 1940s and 50s. They had a huge freak out about comics and everybody was going crazy. So they kind of were really strict as to what you could and couldn't portray in comic books leading into the 60s. The CCA kind of has to put their stamp of approval on your comic for it to be kind of like recognized in the industry. And Stan Lee really wanted to challenge this rule because he thought that comic books could be a vehicle for social commentary, not just mythical stories about superheroes, and actually dealing with real world issues. They have written a comic dealing with drugs, and one of the characters was going through drug use, and he published it anyway without the CCA regards. And it ended up being one of the best things that he did for the comic book industry, because it got the CCA to see that these stories were important and that they needed to be told, and maybe that their regulations were a little too strict, and that they could loosen up on some things to allow true stories and stories that were going to really have an impact in people's lives to be told through comics. That was one of Stan Lee's big things. He wanted to showcase superheroes addressing the issues of the day. So during the time when these comics were created, you had the Vietnam War going on, female revolution, the drug revolution. There was a whole bunch of things going on at the time, and he wanted these characters to reflect that. And while I love all comics, I feel a special connection towards Marvel Comics and their characters, because I always felt like their characters truly dealt with issues that I was dealing with at the time, or that their characters were very much human and relatable. Like, they might have had superpowers and been superheroes, but they still had to deal with real world issues. They still had bills to pay. They still had to go to school. They still were getting bullied. They still were falling in love, getting their heart broken. Just everything that humans go through. Having superpowers didn't shield them from the realities of life. And that is kind of what I really gravitated towards as a kid, and just in general. Stan Lee used his power and influence at the time to push social issues that other publishers and comics and things were not doing at the time. The X-Men were one of the main storylines that was based in the civil rights movement. Like, it took inspiration from that movement. Magneto is basically an XP for Malcolm X, and you have Professor Xavier as an XP for Martin Luther King. In their philosophies, Marvel Comics under Stan Lee was also one of the first comics to showcase black superheroes, and not just in minor roles. They had Robbie Robertson, which was the first African American character in a supporting role. And then they also came out with Black Panther, who debuted in 1966 and was the first black superhero. You would eventually have other heroes like Luke Cage and the Falcon, which was the first ever African American superhero that appeared in Captain America. So in comics, if you don't know, usually there's a page or a letter or box where the editor, the writer kind of writes their like a little commentary or maybe something about the comics or whatever. It's kind of like their space to write the editor's box. And Stan Lee in particular would use his box to address real world issues and provide social commentary on them, and it was called Stan's Soapbox. And that's one of the main things that really drew me to Marvel Comics, is that you have people from all over the world, all walks of life, all planets, and they are fighting together for a common goal and a common good, and working together and working through their differences, and and showing that is an awesome thing, and that is something to strive towards, and that is just a great message, not only just for kids but for everybody. There's a couple of characters that are really impactful. They're characters that I really like of Marvel. Like, I love Doctor Doom, Galactus, Thor, but I would say the characters that kind of really stuck with me and had an impact on me in a personal way would be the X-Men. The X-Men were so great because they were just the outcasts. They were misunderstood. They were the freaks, the weirdos, and I definitely could relate to that growing up because that is definitely how I felt. They just made me feel like I wasn't alone and that there was people out there I could find to relate to me and understand me, and just the things that those comics did for a black girl at that time. Seeing characters like Storm, seeing someone that looked like me in the comics, seeing characters from Black Panther, seeing Shuri, seeing T'Challa, seeing all these characters in the comics that I personally relate to or I personally gravitate towards. It was just really refreshing and just inspired me. I mean, the main thing I talk about on this channel is comics, and most of the time I'm talking about Marvel Comics. My first video on YouTube is talking about Daredevil when it debuted on Netflix, another character that was co-created by Stan Lee. So it was just really important for me to kind of put this video out. I just wanted to express the impact that these characters have had just on me personally and to a lot of other people. I mean, the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe is thanks to Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and all these guys who kind of created this universe, Chris Claremont, just all these guys that kind of had a vision and had foresight and just told these beautiful, amazing stories about humanity and conflicts of the heart and just really true stories that kind of still resonate, obviously, to this day. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you, Stan Lee. Thank you for the stories that you have given me that have stuck with me all throughout my life and gave me confidence to be unafraid and unapologetically myself. Thank you. And thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
You know, I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said.